Everybody deals with it. We're going to discuss how we handle doubt here today. Hey guys, welcome to Tower Hill. My name is Gerard Marrone. I'm the Student Ministries Director here. I am so excited to continue discussing our sermon series for this summer, On the Road Again, Finding God in the Unexpected Journeys. I think this has been such a fitting series during the summer months because we spend so much of our summer on unexpected journeys. If we think about it, so much changes over the summer that we spend 9 to 10 months training over the course of the year. Schedules and routines change. Like up here at Tower Hill, we add a patio service and we give our choir a break. Some work schedules allow you to have flexible hours where you get to leave early on a Friday or come in late on a Monday. And of course, kids are home from school, which throws all the routines out the window and opens up the doors to the unexpected. More than anything, the summer is a time where I feel like so many people go on vacations, which opens up a whole nother world for unexpected journeys. Anybody who has ever flown on an airplane or stepped foot in an airport knows how variable that travel can be. And more than that, when we go on vacations, part of the purpose is to get out of our comfort zones and open ourselves up to the possibility of the unexpected. But what this series has been all about is that when we're on these journeys, whether it be a really long haul trip or just getting over the bridge into Seabright to get into your beach chair, that we can find God in that journey. And just because we have cars, planes, trains, buses doesn't mean that we're any different from those who came before us. And so we've been looking at different stories in Scripture of people encountering God in incredible ways when they were on their specific journey. Today, we're going to be digging into the idea of doubt. What happens when we're on a journey and we begin to doubt? You see, for most people, myself included, doubt has a snowballing effect. We get that first little hint of doubt, and then it starts to allow it to run further and further, and then we just get all turned around because of that doubt creeping in. And I feel like on our journeys, there's always doubts that creep in and seem like they're taking a mind of their own. Sometimes it can be the trip is taking too long, things aren't going right, we're facing another uphill climb. You know, for kids, the classic doubt is that you're never actually going to get where you're going. And we get the classic, are we there yet question. And as the journey continues, that question gets asked more and more frequently. But for adults, it can be equally terrifying, just as it is real. Are we lost? Is our hotel going to be there? What if all of this planning just falls apart on us? In other words, what happens when doubt takes center stage in our journey? So when I was in college, I flew to Athens, Greece after my sophomore year to visit my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and we were there for 2 weeks. She was studying abroad there for the semester, and our semesters aligned differently, so I was able to go and see her. I was going out of the country for the first time and traveling on my own for the first time. And those of you that know me well enough know that I'm a planner, so for weeks leading up to it, I was planning and researching all the different things to do, all the sights to see, all of that stuff. So when I landed in Greece, Claire told me that she had planned out our 2 weekends and we were going to go to these different places and that they were a surprise. And Claire is even more of a planner than I am, so I knew that they were going to be good. The first weekend, we went to a place called Meteora, which is in northern Greece. It's this unbelievable area. It's spectacular. These rock formations where Greek Orthodox monasteries have been built there since around the 1300s, and they're still in their original form. It's incredible. Claire went there when she was on a trip with her study abroad group and wanted to take me back. So we just had to take a bus from Athens. She had booked a hostel there for the weekend, easy as you like. Well, we couldn't find the bus depot because it was 2008. We didn't have smartphones, and neither of us could read or speak Greek. We just wandered around where we thought the bus depot was for what felt like forever until we found it. And yes, I know I don't look it, but I am old enough to remember a time when you couldn't just pull out your phone and look at Google Maps. So we finally find the bus depot. We had supposed to be on a 3 o'clock bus, and we got there about 2.5 hours late. We decided to go on with the trip and got on the bus 3 hours behind when we were supposed to. It was a 5-hour bus ride, and it was the scariest bus ride of my entire life. The cliffs were harrowing, there were no guardrails, and the driver was at least driving 90 the whole time, it felt. We finally get there, and it's super late at night, and the town is shut down, almost everything is closed. The place feels deserted. It was at that point, after the long drive, that we realized that we forgot there was a connection. We were going to have to take another bus. We arrived in a town called Trikala, and our hotel was in a town called Kalimbaka. So of course, being the college kids that we were, we missed the connection and we're just naive and we said, oh, no big deal. We're just going to walk it. We're just going to walk from point A to point B. Before we started the walk, we didn't know which direction to go. We found an internet cafe and we found out that it was actually about 25 kilometers away. So not something that we could walk this late at night. We regrouped, we searched the town for what felt like forever, and we finally found a taxi. We get to our hotel, the journey is at its end until we find out the hotel is overbooked and there's no room for us for the night. The guy at the hotel told us if we just went up around the corner of the building into what was about the darkest street I've ever seen, that we would reach their sister hotel in about a quarter of a mile, and they had rooms available for us under our reservation. At this point, I think it's pretty clear the doubt that we faced in this scenario and how it built up throughout the journey. I doubted that we were ever going to get a room to sleep in. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to stay up overnight so that Claire can sleep and figure all that out. Claire doubted that my parents would ever talk to her again because she got their son lost in Greece. And we both doubted that we would ever have anything out of this more than just a miserable experience. And I think that there's a parallel here. We had to walk up and around this hill into this what looked like an abyss. It was so dark. And I feel like as we look at the story of Jesus and his disciples, that they were facing a similar feeling of just walking into this unknown blackness immediately following Jesus' death. And the story we're going to spend time looking at is the first time in our summer series that it directly involves Jesus. It's found after he was crucified in the book of Luke. We're going to meet a man named Cleopas and his friend walking directly after the resurrection took place. So let's take a look. Now, on the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened there in these days?" I love this part of the story. I chuckle when I read it because I can totally picture myself saying that to somebody else. Like after a huge event happens in this town, some guy asks about what happened and you're like, really? Have you been living under a rock? Like while the resurrection news had yet to be widespread, someone claiming to be the Son of God and being put to death was definitely newsworthy at the time in that surrounding area of Jerusalem. So anyone in or around that city at that time almost certainly would have heard about it. But I love that Jesus continues to play along and he prods Cleopas to dig deeper, and that's where I think it's so vital for us to focus today. "What things," he said. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people." I want to stop there for a second because that's where we see the first hint of doubt creeping into Cleopas here. He says he was a prophet, that Jesus was a prophet. Cleopas didn't state that Jesus was the Son of God now that he was crucified. He wasn't really sure that it was all true, and doubt took over, so he defaulted to using prophet instead of Messiah with this stranger that walked up beside them. This is where I think we need to stop and define what spiritual doubt is for our discussion today. Spiritual doubt is simply not believing that Jesus is who he says he is, or Jesus was who he says he was. So let's continue the story. The chief priests and rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. Once again, we see the next bit of doubt, the next dagger in that. The snowball has begun to build, and this is where it picks up a little bit more snow, and it gets rolling a little bit faster. We had hoped. Those 3 words are so crucial and so brutal. You see, Cleopas was there. He had tickets to the whole thing. We don't know much about him, but the way that Luke chronicles the resurrection story, as soon as he finishes discussing the empty tomb, he refers to Cleopas and this other friend that he's with, the unnamed friend, as 2 of them, which to me would hint that he had an inside track to all of this. The story then continues on. "And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all of this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Once again, you see doubt creeping in here. And I think this is the point in the story that I relate most. A big part of doubt is that there's just an inability to connect the dots in the journey that we're on. We see missed buses. We see missing our destination by 25 kilometers. We see not having a hotel room to stay in, but we don't see where Jesus is leading us. Cleopas had the same experience here. The women went to the tomb and saw the angels, but like Cleopas, those closest to Jesus couldn't connect the dots. And that's where in this story that Jesus starts to prod their doubt, which I just love. He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all of the prophets, he explained to them what was said in the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, the day is almost over." So he went to stay with them. I love the fact that after this conversation on the road, even not knowing it was Jesus, Cleopas just wanted to spend more time with this man. They urged him to come and stay with them, to come eat with them. And I feel like this is a big piece that they just wanted to be close to this person, to this wise man. It was as if he resembled somebody, but they just couldn't peg it. I think we've all had both of those feelings. The familiarity from strangers that we can't quite grab onto, and that whatever it is that they have, we just want to be around it longer. So the story continues. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way, and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. When I read this story, I relate so much to the emotions that Cleopas goes through, as well as his actions, because we've all doubted at times. In fact, I think it's fair to argue that doubt was the predominant spiritual position for the disciples. If you think about it, they doubted at every step of the way. They were always questioning, they were always wondering. You never felt like they really totally got it. They weren't able to connect those dots like we said earlier. And I think it's fascinating to see that if we look at the story of some of our disciples, Jesus appears to them in their doubt. For instance, if we see where Jesus appears to Peter after his resurrection, it was when Peter was out fishing. And that's where I find so much of a parallel. You see, for me, my doubt causes me to get busy. When things aren't going right, I'm a doer. So I just try to fix things. Action, whether it's right or wrong, is better than inaction in my brain. And that's really how Cleopas reacts in our story. He's walking away from Jerusalem, away from the epicenter of what just happened, of where Jesus' ministry was, and then the start of this movement. He's heading out after the Passover is over, going back to whatever he did beforehand. We don't know what that is. His doubt led him into that action. And the same went for many of the disciples, including Peter, as I mentioned earlier. After all of this finished and Jesus was crucified, before he started appearing to his disciples, they just went back to what they were doing because they doubted Jesus was who he said he was. Peter was a fisherman, so he went back to fish. He didn't know what else to do. On the emotional side, so many days I have felt like Cleopas. Like I too was saying that I had hoped Jesus was going to redeem me, that he was going to clean up the mess. And I'd be lying if I said that I haven't gone through moments, through days, through months, through seasons where I doubted everything about my faith, where I've doubted Jesus was who he said he was. There have been so many moments where I've wanted to see with my own eyes and believe like the 11 did, only to be disappointed when Jesus didn't appear to me. But brothers and sisters, I think that there are 3 actions to be taken from Cleopas' story and encounter with Jesus and applied wherever we are feeling doubt. First and foremost, I think it's important for us to let out our doubt. If we look at our story today, it strikes me that Cleopas starts talking and sharing openly about what happened over that week leading up to Jesus' crucifixion with this guy he meets on the road who was a complete stranger. We know that it was Jesus, but Cleopas didn't. I can picture the emotion in which Cleopas shares what happened. I get a sense in reading this that Cleopas just desperately needed to talk to somebody. He was scared and doubt crept in so fast that he just needed to get it out. It's as if he needed to just do a brain dump. Like he was just so overwhelmed, he just needed to get it off his chest. And I think at the end of it, part of why Cleopas didn't want this stranger to leave his side is because he did exactly what Cleopas needed in that moment. He just listened. He was just there so that Cleopas could get this out. In our journey in Greece, even all these years later, I can still remember through that whole search for the bus depot that Claire and I shared our doubts openly. We considered, should we keep going? Should we try to get there and figure it out? Should we just cancel the trip? We discussed those doubts and we flip-flopped back and forth. One of us was strong. The other person was like, this is stupid. There's no way this is going to work. But we shared that. We got it off of our chests. And I think just like that we shared our doubts about our situation in Greece, I think that's something that we need to do with each other as the body of Christ when it comes to our doubts in Jesus. We need to be able to share our struggles, share our doubts with one another. Everyone in this room needs someone who they can turn to and say, I am just hurting. I am struggling. I am dying in a pile right now. We need someone to turn to and say that I am doubting everything, doubting the plan God has for me, doubting the path he's put me on, doubting that he's there, doubting that he cares. I just need somebody to do that. We all need to have that person in our lives. Second, I think it's important that we find community when doubt arrives. We meet Cleopas on the road to Emmaus with someone already, but he's eager to meet new people and he's eager to stay with those people. In times of struggle, in times of doubt, we just want intimacy with others. We want to feel close to others, and even if we run out of things to say, just that proximity is enough. That's why finding a community where you can just be near other people is so crucial. I think it's also important to not gloss over the fact that in this story, in Luke's gospel, the first time since the resurrection that Jesus appears to others, he ends up sharing a meal with them. Don't miss the fact that it doesn't have to be this massively spiritual thing in your community that helps you get over the doubt. In this story and in so many other stories, it just shows that God loves food and wants us to just share food with others. He's so happy when we just get together and eat awesome stuff and just spend time together. It doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. Just share a meal with other people. A close pastor friend of mine and mentor of mine for years now has hosted what his family calls Sunday supper. They open their house up to the neighbors each Sunday evening, and it's just a giant potluck. Everyone brings something. Everybody eats what everybody else brings. It's just this giant thing. He's a pastor, but he's not preaching or teaching during this. He's not trying to get people to come to his church. He's just eating really good food. If I know him, it's tacos, and sharing a table with other people in his community. And I'll tell you from hearing it from him directly, it is a healing of his soul every time he gets to be in that community. It has the power to push out any doubt we may have. And finally, I think this one's kind of the obvious one, but at the same time the hardest. When doubt arrives, we need to draw closer to the one who can take that doubt away. By spending time in Scripture with Jesus, Cleopas has his heart reignited for that relationship. It helps rekindle what was lost when doubt crept in. When we are at our point of most doubt, when everything seems to just be going the wrong direction in our faith and our belief, that's when we need to turn to Jesus more than ever. We need to focus on him and spend time with him in his word. We need to allow Jesus to reignite our hearts and minds, which will push all of that doubt out. It seems almost too simple, but at the same time, it's something that we're capable of doing. We can all find time in our lives to spend it in community with Jesus and to push doubt down and allow that flame to be fueled up again. And so that's where this story ended for us, for Cleopas. We don't know what happened after that. We doubt. We can't see the dots being connected. There's a master weaver behind it working in our lives. For our Greece trip, even though it was mayhem getting to Meteora, we did walk up that hill. We went around, we walked up into the blackness, and we found a hotel. And it was way nicer than the hostel that we paid for and booked. And the next morning, we woke up and we opened up the doors and we had a balcony that overlooked the entire countryside, as well as the beginning of the rock formations where these monasteries were built. It was incredible. You see, even when we doubt, Jesus is who he says he is. It doesn't shake his love for us. In the end, is the payoff worth the doubt and wrestling with the truth about Jesus? You bet. Absolutely it is. Brothers and sisters, we all face times of doubt. How can we not with what we're exposed to and go through each day? But we know the end of the story. We know that through all the doubt, through all the pain, through all the struggle, that in the end, Jesus took that all on himself at Calvary. All because he's just crazy about us. He just wants to be near us. He's cleared the way. Now it's our job to push doubt aside and journey with God.